Hi, baddies. Welcome back to another episode of Tara's Baddies Club. It is really great because we have gotten 3 episodes out in 3 weeks. So, an episode each week. And I'm just really excited because I like when I'm on my schedule with my content. I like when I'm regular. I like when I'm on a flow. I just love it when I'm just getting stuff done and I'm organized and we're just working on my mental health still, living my best life, baking, trying to get my nonprofit started, filing for all of that. And I can't wait when I get that $2,000 for that lawyer and I get to file for the 501c3. And if you guys don't know about my nonprofit, I'm trying to start a nonprofit that's going to be a safe haven for domestic violence survivors or survivors of kind of any crime in a sense and have a safe place for them. The goal is to have tiny homes so that each person can kind of have their separate space. And then also there's going to be like a main house kind of together. So I would live in that house and then people would come in and I would help them transition back into the real to get a stable job and transition back into I hate to say the wild, but the wild, wild west because it is pretty wild out there. And I am so excited. So if you guys want to help me, I have a link with the donations, a GoFundMe. You guys can also send me a Venmo. But if you guys do, make sure it's a gift for my safe haven. And so you guys can help me build. I also have been posting about the graphics. If you guys have any opinions about the graphics, I really want to hear from you guys on what I should do, how I should create this, because we all have amazing opinions and there's so many survivors out there and I would love how to best help survivors. So we're going to get into today's episode with Joel and Karm from Surviving the Survivor. Their podcast, Surviving the Survivor, is a leading true crime podcast and YouTube channel featuring some of the biggest, most compelling guests in the space. Hosted by journalist Joel Waldman and his mother, Karm, the show blends sharp reporting with heartfelt conversations, tackling the hardest cases and most complex survivor stories with honesty and compassion. With its unique mix of professional insight and human connection, Surviving the Survivor has become a trusted platform where true crime experts, survivors, and advocates share their experiences and their perspectives. They also talk a lot about the Dan Adelson case. We'll talk slightly about that today as well. But let's get into this episode with Joel and Karm. Well, welcome, Joel and Karm. I'm so excited to have you guys. I was on your podcast with Collier, and I also saw you guys at CrimeCon, and I feel like there's a true crime family, and you guys are in the ring too.
Yeah, 1,000%. Thank you for having us on the show.
Orlando, we were
Karm,
together.
let's try not to cut each other off in literally the first 1/10 of 1 second. It'll happen enough. But we did meet Tara in Orlando, and it was awesome. And I agree with you. The true crime community is amazing because a lot of people in the same boat, and a lot of people with obviously the same interests. And it is a unique community with a lot of really good people.
Yes. And then, Karm, what were you saying about CrimeCon?
No, that it was in Orlando, I remember.
Yes. And then I remember you coming up to me and okay, because there's so many people, I didn't put 2 and 2 together at first. And then I met Karm. And then it was so great. Joel bought a t-shirt of Survivor Squad. And it's
Still have
funny
it.
because yes, I love it. And whenever you Google Survivor, it's always you guys come up as well.
Yeah. Yeah. What was it like? You met the legend, Karm. I'm glad you didn't know it at the moment, but when you found out that you met the legendary Karm, who's now frozen for a moment,
The
what did
legendary Karm is like all legendary things. It's a has been, because lately I have been almost more than half retired. I say I'm about 80% retired.
Okay. Well, it was like your energy is just so sweet, Karm. You came up, you were so patient, and we had a lot of people around the table, and there's just a lot of commotion at CrimeCon, but you were so sweet, you were so patient, your energy is just so kind. And then I put two and two together, and then I was like, I need to go say hi to her because I don't think like I fully understood at the time. And then Joel came up, and then I realized, like, okay, you guys are both here, you guys are setting up. And then Joel, you came with your family, which was really cool because your wife is just beautiful, your children are beautiful. And then I'm also in
Thank
the
you.
part of your book where you're talking about how everyone should have kids.
Yeah. It's I never thought I'd have them. I had them really late, actually, and I got married late, and I've done everything in life late. But honestly, it was never something I thought about. But I highly recommend. I remember my mother-in-law saying to me before we had kids, "You don't want to hear those little babies saying 'daddy,'" and it was literally giving me the worst anxiety. I was like, "No, I don't. I want nothing to do with this." But now, in retrospect, it really is the greatest thing that I think a person can do. Sort of a selfish act because you're producing a little mini you, but it's pretty cool. And I have cool kids, so I guess I got lucky. But yeah, it's by the way, another funny thing about Karm, I went to a university outside of Boston. We just got interviewed by a magazine there, but I was telling her not only is Karm legendary, and for those who do not know, she is a child Holocaust survivor, but now she's been asked in her Miami Beach building and surrounding areas to bless people, almost Pope-like. People will come up to her and say, "Karm, I need a blessing from a Holocaust survivor." I never heard of this in my life. It's hilarious to me. But yes, Tara, she is giving blessings. So maybe you'll get one at the end of the show.
By the way, I never talked about this ever, but I think it's based on the fact, and believe me, I don't plan this to be a morbid session, but the blessing is based on the fact that when you think about it, that 1,500,000 children were murdered, Jewish children were murdered during the Holocaust, and I survived, then I was just lucky. So my luck may be contagious and other people can get. Anyway, they came over at my swimming pool, and somebody asked me to bless them, and my grandkids, who are now virtually adults, were sitting with me, and they almost cracked up laughing. But then after a while they said, "Just do it, Grandma, don't hesitate." So now I just go and bless everybody. The interviewer today I blessed. If you want, in the end, I can bless you too, with pleasure. Maybe it will.
I would love that. I feel my life has been a little bit rocky lately, and I'm just been trying to put it back together since all the craziness of like the Survivor Squad podcast ending, the breakup, that stuff, and everything. And I wish him all the best and well and everything. And I know you guys are friends with him too. But I could use that in my life. I could use that good luck. And I just honestly, I look up to you, Karm, because you also have experienced so much and so much at a young age going through the Holocaust, seeing so much tragedy. I look to you as kind of someone that I would like to be. You know, you created this whole life for yourself. You are, I believe, a psychiatrist as well, right?
No, 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 no. I have
Psychologist.
a master's degree in social work, and then I have some additional courses, and then I play a psychiatrist because my husband he was a psychiatrist.
However, Karm is a licensed therapist, and my parents. It's another reason I'm screwed up. When I was growing up, my dad is, he's just he passed away sadly, but was a psychiatrist, and my mother a licensed social worker, and they used to do family therapy. They worked together. They had a crappy little office in our town, and my dad would see the husband, my mom would see the wife, or my mom would see the kids, my dad would see the parents, or whatever it was. And then like 10 years ago, I found out that like 90% of their patients were my friends' parents, but I wasn't supposed to know that back in the day. But Karm is excellent at relationship advice. So don't be afraid to ask. She can bless you and give you relationship advice.
I have a lot of goal, like fix up other people's houses when yours is burning or something like that. But I always had this way of pretending like I know what the hell I am talking about.
I love that. Do you feel that it's a survival instinct coming from what you went through, and then also trying to also make sure, because I feel like the quote unquote the overbearing Jewish mother
It's a real thing.
it's a real thing, and I feel like it also might be a trauma response of what everyone had to go through.
No, I think that what happens, and maybe it's my alibi for my behavior, but I feel many times when I say something that like really irks Joel, I say it to prevent something bad from happening, like a protective thing, but it's annoying. I know it's annoying. I have no doubt about it. That's annoying. My mother used to say it to me, and like the word that we both my mother and grandmother used always was, they said it in Hungarian, but what they were saying, be careful. You take a flight on an airplane. How can you be careful? You are not the pilot. But the admonition was, be careful, be careful. By the way, speaking of marriage and breakups and all that, I did do counseling and therapy for about 37, 38 years. I would in this sense, I was very honest. I would tell people that be prepared. I am pro-marriage biased, pro-marriage,
What about pro kids?
and I'm also pro-kids biased. And I would warn people, because nobody is completely neutral and non-judgmental, and it's virtually impossible for human beings not to carry certain ideas of what is right or wrong for them, and better face up to it, that that's what it is. But I think if you don't have children, you miss out on something. I do think you miss out on something. And I can see Joel is an old parent, but I can see he calls me up, and his 6-year-old, has a home run with the T-ball, and he says, he played so well today. He hit the ball, blah, 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 like you are talking about some famous baseball player. I think you get a kick out of it.
He's got to be on the Yankees, or he gets excommunicated from the family.
Oh my gosh, that's not a lot of pressure at all.
No, not. But I will say this, Tara. I don't know if you want children or not. I don't think you're supposed to ask a woman her age, whether or not she's pregnant, or if she wants kids. Actually, Karm and I saw Jerry Seinfeld doing stand-up, and he was much funnier than we expected. And he does a whole bit about, to be safe in marriage, just never ask your wife anything. Just remain silent. And it was hilarious.
But the part that was hilarious was that he said, the way I find out what my wife thinks, I listen in secretly to her conversation.
No, that's not what he said. He said the way he knows about how he's doing is by listening to his wife. His wife talks to her own friends, and she'll be like, Jerry was a pain in the ass, or Jerry did this. And so he says everything he finds out about himself, it's through his wife's conversations with her friends.
On the phone.
Yeah. But anyway, so what I was going to say, though, is there is a real, and it's interesting you brought it up so early, but in writing the book that I wrote, which is the same title as a podcast, Surviving the Survivor, which is like 20% my mother's Holocaust story and really like 80% just life advice. It was all recorded conversations. And I say this like tongue in cheek, but it is the only laugh out loud Holocaust book you'll ever read. But it's funny. It's dysfunctional. It's definitely not normal. Our relationship's definitely not normal. But one of the things I learned is that I'm not normal. So like being the son of a psychiatrist, and my dad was born during the Great Depression, so he had all kinds of money issues, like fears. And my mother, being a Holocaust survivor, these are real things. They get passed down. Like I'm convinced now that it's in my DNA. Like I walk around with an anxiety level from 1 to 10 at probably a 9 every day of my life. And I've always done it. Just part of who I am. I have like OCD issues. And I'm convinced, my dad would laugh because my dad was a very like contrarian psychiatrist. He didn't believe in the way a lot of other people think, and he believes in free choice. And I'm making up stuff in my head, but I do think that there is something to be said. And I know that you obviously dealt with your own trauma and you're a survivor. So maybe don't have kids, but if you want kids, have them.
I do want kids. That is honestly something that I've always wanted in life. And when I hear Karm talk about how people should just have kids, she's pro marriage. I think that that's great. And then it also was great to honestly see you, Joel, with your family at CrimeCon, because I was with Collier during that time, and it was like, okay, like your wife's a little younger than you two, and you have kids, and like, Collier is a little older than me. So it's like, oh my gosh, I love seeing that dynamic. And I love your guys' relationship as well, because your show, The Surviving the Survivor, and then the book was based on your guys' relationship. And I see that it has a powerful dynamic. And I think that everybody should have a show with their parents to also just work through generational trauma.
Yeah. Listen, I tell everybody it's not like I wrote this book and, my mom's a survivor, a Holocaust survivor again, but every family has a history. And even if you're not going to write it and get it published, and I got lucky and fortunate that with the success of the podcast, I got a book deal, but everyone's got family history. I mean, you certainly do, right? I mean, and yours has been documented as it should be. But I mean, anyone out there, even if it's just like journaling or writing, I think writing was one of the hardest things I've done just because I was so anxious about doing it, but it was also really cathartic. And when I was done, it was like, really like a feeling. I still can't believe that I have my own book. Like it's a huge, I don't know why, but it's a huge feeling of accomplishment.
And I'm not bragging, but I truly, in any language, even languages that I learned when I was little, I cannot write. I think, and for that reason, I even look up to Joel. I think he writes well, like my type of well, like it has to, like it catches the flavor of life, and what's happening.
Yes, I feel like the book was truly a testament to your relationship, and also kind of you also looking up to your mom, Joel. Was that really the intention of your book to begin with?
Yeah, 100%.
What
So
was it? I missed this point. What
if
was
I
it?
look up to you, because you wanted me to repeat it, whether or not I look up to you,
Yeah, repeat it once more, Joel.
I need to get you some hearing aids, Karm. Please don't get there yet.
No.
Yeah, I mean, you know, parenting is an interesting thing. I just always assumed that everyone has good parents, but a lot of people have really crappy parents. But two amazing role models. I was never like worshiping Rihanna. I was, worshiping my mom and dad, probably to an unhealthy extent. But I was telling a story a little while ago. My dad wrote his own book about psychiatry. And even though it probably sold 3 copies and he made 29 cents, like as a kid growing up, I was like always, I was like, wow, my dad wrote a book and it was published and he's got his picture on the cover, and
And
it was
may
just always
rest,
something I wanted to do. I was never,
Joel,
yeah.
may he rest in peace. He really didn't know how to write.
It was very academic. Let's put it that way. No one has ever understood his book to this day. You can get it, by the way.
It's our family joke. Even he, when he was older, he had a sense of humor. He said, "Can somebody explain this book to me?"
Yeah.
He wrote it, but he wanted somebody to explain it.
You can get it on Amazon or eBay for like 3 cents, right? It's Humanistic Psychiatry from Oppression to Choice is the name of the book. But Karm and I, on a serious note, we're just getting rolling, but I'm writing another book called Surviving the Psychiatrist, and it's also going to be like a collaboration with my mom, but really about my dad's philosophy on it. My dad had a very interesting, he studied with a very interesting, he was trained by a guy named Thomas Szasz, and Thomas Szasz did not believe in mental illness. So it was very, very controversial. It still is. I'm not saying my dad does not believe, my dad did believe
He
in mental
wasn't
illness,
as
but he,
extreme as Thomas
as
Szasz.
Thomas Szasz, but my dad did feel like ultimately you had free choice and you could get yourself out of
Thomas
problems.
Szasz wrote a book called The Myth of Mental Illness. And then he wrote another 40 books with different titles, and they were all the same. The Myth of Mental Illness. It's true. The same topic, the same
He
topic.
probably sold 3 more copies than dad, but he's kind of a very well-known figure in the world of psychiatry.
Yeah,
But
in the world of, like the antithesis, the opposite of psychiatrists.
Karm, why do we go on every show and the host can never talk? It's obnoxious. Like I would be disgusted by
Well,
this.
I
Go
can
ahead,
shut
Tara.
up for 5 minutes max.
I love this. I love to see this banter. And plus, I don't talk a lot of time on my own show unless I'm talking with a person and I'm literally talking about my podcast course or something. And then I'm trying to, and you guys are always welcome to be on my podcast course if you want to. But that's the thing I talk about. And then I'm like, Tara, you need to draw yourself back and stop talking about your podcasting course and trying to get everyone to come on it.
I didn't even know about this. Well,
Yeah.
I get the same thing for my book. Everyone's like, "Why you're always plugging your?" I get yelled at all the time. But the book, I always say, because I was a broadcast news guy, is the most important story that I've
What
I've
is
ever
your
reported. It's very
podcast?
important for me. Yeah, it's very important for me to get the book, so I do plug it a lot, but not financially. It's I want my mom's story out there. But what is the podcast course? I need help.
Yeah.
What
So
is,
I
yeah,
created a podcasting course. It's 8 weeks. And basically, I teach people how to start a podcast from start to finish, how to be more ethically inclined, how to talk to certain survivors. And also, because sometimes SA survivors may need different language compared to like someone who has a family member that has been murdered. So, just going through all the nuances and then talking to different podcasters like you guys yourself and talking them how they built, how they grew, what trends they kind of see, how they're growing. And yeah, if you guys ever want to be a part of it, I also do panels every once in a while. And last week, I believe it was, I had Denise Huskins on from American Nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
And then Haley Gray, she's a true crime researcher, but she's an ethical true crime researcher. And then I had Jake Deptula on from Strictly Stalking, and then myself, and then a lot of other survivors come because I get approached by so many survivors of how to monetize their story, how to not get screwed over in the media. And like, Joel, you've worked in the media forever. Like, how many survivors have you seen get, just taken advantage of in the media?
Well, the media sadly thrives on, like I was in news 27 years, which I can't believe. But I mean, I always say to my wife, why are these people talking to us? Like we will get them in the worst times of their lives. It's always, and I'm very careful with that. Like I'm very, like discerning. I will not go up to victims. I did this prior to my true crime podcast. I just don't want to be that guy, but I know plenty of people that do. And, at the literally like moments after their child's death or whatever it is, I'll be knocking on doors. Sometimes you're forced to do that in broadcast news, but yeah, it's tough. It's interesting because I'm always like that. The person I'm always saying to my wife, why? My wife she was a CBS News correspondent, but I'm like, why are they talking like I would never want to do that. But sometimes it's, the microphone I always say is mightier than any firearm. It's a very powerful weapon. So if you need to get like the word out about something, people want to talk. They want to get it off their chest. So it's a fine line, but I try to in those situations, I try to let people come to me as opposed to going to them. And I think that is very important. in your course that you were just saying, because I think ethics is lost, and not sound like an old guy. I'm not that old, but it's there needs to be a certain kind of integrity. And my whole gripe now, not without getting on a soapbox, is like media just basically died. Like everyone is taking a side. It's all political. It's either your right wing, your left wing, and I feel like the vast majority of people um, want the same thing. So it's really like a vocal minority that's dividing us all, and not a majority. Most of us want the same things, but I digress a little bit.
Yeah, so you can offer a lot of great opinions and knowledge for the course, so that's a different story for a different time. And then, Karm, with you being a survivor with your show, you guys make people feel so comfortable to even come on your show too, because I think there is so much power in being a survivor, is that when you look at someone, I don't know if you feel this way, but you can just tell that that person has experienced darkness because you have yourself.
No, I definitely, and it's also a question of how intuitive you are, how intuitive a person you are in general, and that definitely helps. For example, one of the things that Joel did, almost like, and I didn't say, wasn't my idea, but it was kind of, when he starts to present the case, he mentions the victim first. There was a victim. It wasn't a crime story with no victim involved. Nobody. It's not that nobody got hurt. Somebody did get hurt. So he mentions the victim of the story too. And if you go to a crime conference, probably 30-40% of the people who attend are actual victims and are interested.
I'll be honest, I didn't realize any of that. Like I just have always had an interest in true crime without even really realizing. I like psychologically, that's really where, kind of like what propels people to do these things, what's going on. And like I love talking to people like yourself who actually was, involved and is a true victim. I love talking to Ann Burgess, who's a literal living legend who has studied this for decades. That's where my interests lie. But thankfully, I've never experienced stuff personally. But I think because of what my mom went through, maybe that's why, like, kind of subconsciously, I got involved in it.
You
Yeah.
see, the problem with me personally, you want to hear it? Okay, we need 3 sessions. No, but the problem with me is that Joel helped me see this when we started to do it together. He had more time, and I could see him through his discussions with him that's what I did. When it happened to me, I was 1 month before my 6 weeks before my 5th birthday when it happened to me. And I was just one night without any warning. I was just tossed into this nunnery, opened the door and pushed into the nunnery from a very, very loving grandmother, grandfather, father, and mother. And so I developed this defense of kind of shutting off and responding that way. And then it turns out I carry it until today. Like the other day, I was upset with something, and I was like Scarlett O'Hara in Gone with the Wind. I said, I'm not going to think about this today. And succeeded in not thinking about it, which is like it had to be developed early and in light of what was happening.
Catherine Ramsland, who's a psychologist, and she's connected. She taught Brian Koberger, and she's basically a criminologist, and she teaches this stuff. But she wrote a book with BTK. Like she has studied him extensively, and talks about his mind is basically like a Rubik's cube. Like he compartmentalizes. So like 1 minute he can be like the animal control guy, then the next minute he can be the president of the church, and the next second he can be a serial killer. And I kind of joke with my mom because she's got this survivor instinct. And I saw this in writing the book, because, my mom also lost a child. And during the writing of the book, she lost my dad of her husband of 63 years. And she tells you, it was sad. The other night, my mom called me and said, I had a dream about your father. He was saying the nicest things. Like, it has really been the toughest loss for her. But during the writing of the book, like, I could see her surviving, like, in real time. Like, she's like, because
Like
I would be,
switching it off.
yeah, because I would say, like, I need to go and, like, weep. And I was, like, feeling bad. Like, I still haven't, like, I've had moments where I cry, but I haven't, like, I feel like I haven't mourned my dad. And my mom, like, I'll ask, like, there's nothing off limits. I'll ask my mom, like, whatever. And she's like, screw you. I'll do this my way. But I can see her, and I don't know what goes on behind closed doors, like when she's alone, but she can literally like a faucet, turn it on, turn it off, and just push things out. And it's kind of like half psychopathic, but half like it's like a life skill that has saved her. It's wild. I mean, I can't do that, and she can. And so it's like an interesting observation.
Last night, in our building, every Tuesday they have a movie. There's a big screen, and people come, and it's just as an amenity of the building in Miami Beach for the old people. So they had this movie called Lee Miller, just Lee, and there was a book written by her son, and she was a fashion photographer after she stopped being a model for Vogue in the 1950s, and then she became a war photographer. And in the end of the movie, they were showing some gruesome war pictures, and most people were teary-eyed.
Well, we'll have to get Spielberg to do the first laugh out loud Holocaust movie with you, Karm. I'll have to get someone to write it. I'm not a screenplay guy, so we'll see.
But I am one of those people, like, I would make an absolutely lousy actress because I get bored telling the same stories over and over and over again. So I always add to it a little and take away a little. And one of the stories that I added to my repertory, so to speak, just the last few weeks, is that there is some truth to it. That there is generational trauma when you experience something, pretty heavy. It doesn't stop. Let's say if somebody was experiencing a child molesters, it doesn't stop the day that person disappears from their life. They carry it, and maybe they give it even to their children and even to their grandchildren in a certain way. That type of stuff.
Yeah. Well, they say that you carry the cells from your from your grandparents and stuff in your body because your mom has your cells in her, and then your grandma had your
but
mom's cells in you.
Even from the behavior of your mother and grandmother, if they were from Appalachia, let's say, and was major hardship, it's still today you will worry about certain things that other people don't even think about.
Yeah.
I mean, where you come from. Your mother is okay?
Yeah, no, she's not 100% okay, but she's okay enough to go on and live life. She lives in Franklin, Tennessee now, and she has an amazing partner that is there for her. He's a retired fire captain. And so I completely trust him. I think that my mom's always going to be a little bit codependent in her relationships and appeasing, but with this person, it's kind of the perfect person, and it's not someone that's going to take advantage of her. So I'm very grateful for that in my life, but I'm interested to hear about the generational trauma, even that you mentioned grandchildren. Do you notice Joel's kids, your grandchildren, even have any like generational trauma with like your experience?
Not necessarily Joel's children, but
Okay.
my daughter's children who were born first. Uh, and now they are like 29, 31, 26. You know, my
I
grandchildren
can't
are
wait for them to hear this.
adults. I'm sure they were impacted by my story. I'm positive.
Yeah.
By the way, this is interesting. My kids, who are soon to be 11, 9, and soon to be 6. And by the way, I have the only boy. My sister had 5 daughters, so I win.
And he rubs it in incessantly.
Constantly. I love it. My sister's like the perfect child. She was valedictorian of her high school class. She was a doctor. So I finally won at something, and I had the only
Poor boy.
the only boy. But I don't think anywhere in the world, I would put money on this. There's a 6-year-old whose grandmother is a Holocaust survivor, not great grandmother, but grandmother. Because my mother, I got married very late, had my son late at almost 50, and my mom was 4.5 in the war. It's crazy. My mom was younger almost by a year and a half than my
No,
son
but,
is. My
but
son's
you
this
know,
little kid. But
there
but who else would know? Karm, why are you interrupting me now, Karm? But I
are
don't think there's any kids, not that I'm competing. I'm just saying it's interesting. And I tell them this like in a kid-like way, that their grandma is really important. She's kind of a living, breathing piece of history. Stop being a wuss. Your grandmother is not like I say stuff. I don't really say that last part. But my point is that you're not going to meet kids of that age whose direct grandmother is a Holocaust survivor. You don't agree, Karm?
no, but yes, I agree with that. But one thing I have to say that you cannot compare his son at the age of 5 and me 6 weeks before my fifth birthday when they came to take us by the trains, by the cattle trains, and my mother walked out to the backyard. You can't compare my mental state. First of all, no offense, Joel, I was a girl even then. And
True.
girls are more advanced. And second, I was living from birth until that moment with my grandmother, grandfather, mother, and father, the only child. And I was a little old lady. I I was a genuine little old lady, and my stepfather later on made this joke that I never developed, with the same progression. Like I was very smart as a very little kid because of necessity and the war and so forth. And then I kind of leveled off like everybody else and grew up relatively with a relatively high I mean average IQ, not so high, maybe a little higher than average, but average IQ. Certain parts are terrible, my IQ, but certain. And I just found out recently because if you go on Instagram, you can take IQ tests. I never took an IQ test in my whole life. I had no idea what it was. But anyway, I was a little old lady at the age of I was born in 39. This was 44. And it was 6 weeks before my birthday, and I was a little old lady. My grandson, when he was my age, being the youngest and the boy, and spoiled by his two sisters, by his father, by his mother, by everybody, he was like still a little bit baby-like. Smart, but he was a little baby-like. Do you agree?
Cut him a break, Karm. He's only 5 years old. Yes,
No,
he's
but what I say is that you usually bring him up that he's the same age as I am.
no. I just say in comparison because he's like this little kid. Like he would be eaten alive in that kind of situation. My mother had a. I mean, it's crazy though. I mean, the point I'm making is that not even 5 years old, my mother had kind of like she says, precociousness and like toughness at that age. Like as the war was, so my mom was kept in a Catholic school. The nun watched her. It was a Catholic school for boys, and she kind of had the presence to know to not tell people she was Jewish. And then when she was by the way, my mom screamed at my grandmother saying a mother who loves her child does not leave them with someone else, which was traumatic in and of itself. But when they were reunited, it was the siege of Budapest and bombs were raining down, and she had learned like her Hail Marys and all this stuff from being in Catholic school and knew the non-Jewish prayers and would say them out loud so people would, reinforce the fact that no one would be led on to the fact that they were Jewish and maybe something bad would happen. So
because we all
she
had
was
to
like,
go down to the common basement because there were bombardments, and the people in the building were nice, but some of them we were afraid that they would go to the police and tell them that we are new in the building, we look suspicious. But I knew who we were. For example, my mother had false documents with different names, and I would call her by the false documents. I was a weirdo. So anyway, that
by the way, it's not all bad. I've noticed there's many advantages to being a Holocaust survivor once you survive later in life. Everyone loves Karm. Karm gets, basically free passes to things. She gets to sign books that she hasn't written. She gets invited to dinners. She's the guest of honor at certain things. So, it's not all bad, right, Karm?
it's very typical of survivors of the Holocaust. For many, many, many years, they didn't talk about it. And then when they talked about it, it wasn't, I truly, like Marilyn Lerner, for example, people didn't even know exactly that I was a survivor. When I lived in
She was
New
my
York,
mom's good friend. No one knows who Marilyn is but you, Karm. It was
but
one of
I'm
my mom's
telling
good
you so that you.
I've, like a lot of my friends I grew up with. I have a bunch of friends. I mean, they all know, but a lot of people who knew me like in high school, but not well, had no idea. We were at a book signing in Philadelphia, and an older brother of a friend of mine. So I went to high school with Dan, and Dan's brother Mitchell showed up, and he had and I didn't know either. His dad was a Holocaust survivor. I had no idea because they did not talk about it, and it was kind of interesting that neither of us knew that the other had a parent who's a
There
survivor.
was
But I definitely the
there was
moral is
a ceremony in Auschwitz, in one of the big concentration camps, this year for the 8th anniversary, and I flipped on the TV. Wasn't even it was an American TV station, and I looked, and that was a woman, literally from Highland Park, a social worker like myself.
that's our hometown. Karm, you're talking like you're making references no one knows what you're talking about. That's our hometown in the great state of New Jersey.
Yeah, well, that's where we lived for 36 years, and it's a small town. And
But the point I'm making, it's not healthy, I don't think, to not. There was like a pride where they didn't want to talk about it because they. I'll tell you an interesting story really quick without being stereotypical, but I think it's important. I told it the other day. I have a great uncle, my grandfather's brother. He survived a Russian labor camp. Good old Uncle Alan, and he did it by basically lying and saying that he was a chef, and they put him in the kitchen, and he was able to get extra bread and survive that way. So he had to do whatever he could. But then he came to the States, and he was a leather businessman. He sold leather.
he did
He's one of
the
the he was one of the first guys to like
before World War II, so he
he,
was an expert on leather.
he was a leather expert, and he would sell leather to like the Gucci's and Prada types of the world. And he would always say, buy low, sell high. But he belonged to the synagogue down here where we are in South Florida. And it exists, but these people don't exist, sadly, anymore, including Uncle Alan. But at one time, it had the highest percentage, the highest number of Holocaust survivors of any synagogue outside of Israel. It was all Holocaust survivors. And again, not to be stereotypical, but it happened to be in this one synagogue. These guys, one was like wealthier and more successful than the next from the craziest things. Like, what'd this guy do? Oh, he invented the hanger for clothes or dry cleaning. Like crazy stories of what he do. Oh, he every zipper on every human being was manufactured by his company. Like it's all these like weird businesses that were necessities, but they came from. The point I'm making is like I stress and I've had everything handed to me, and most people stress, and these people had nothing, literally like the shirts on their backs, and literally not two pennies to rub together, and they just recreated themselves and rebuilt themselves. And I think that's a really good example for survivors, not necessarily like from a financial standpoint, but you can rebuild yourself, like as a person as well. So they're interesting role models. And by the way, they used to fight with each other. Like one guy would put my Uncle Alan down and say, "Oh, you were at a Russian labor camp? I was in Auschwitz for 13 months." Like they would fight with each other about it, which is unnecessary, but I did like the competitive spirit, I have to say.
And I remember one funny thing. You wanted to interview somebody, and I remember as if it were today, he was sitting near Uncle Alan, and you wanted to interview him and said, "Sorry, but my grandson is coming from California to interview." You remember?
Yeah, there was like dibs on this guy for interviews. Yeah, everyone was trying to
Sorry,
make
but I'm giving the interview to my grandson who's coming from California.
Karm. I honestly don't know. Like I say this about the podcast, like why or how anyone watches, because we are kind of obnoxious, but Tara has
But
not said a
Joel,
word
I
in
am
like
not
20 minutes.
only, you are obnoxious by yourself now because I'm hardly there.
So part of my trauma actually is I had I'm the youngest. So I had to watch everything go on. And so I'm used to just sitting there and also being quiet and observing everything. And
You're
this
very
is
good at it.
this is perfect for me because I love observing dynamics and just absorbing. And I think that a lot of your conversations are very interesting, even if you guys are like, what am I talking about right now? And I think that's also a trauma response of like, what am I doing? Like, am I good enough? Like, because you guys obviously created a really great show where you guys obviously are really well at putting on a show for people where people enjoy. So,
Thank you.
you got
I
to
have a
give
question.
yourself
I have a
kudos.
question for you, Tara.
Yeah.
I think it's Joel 99%.
One thing like I'm really bad at and Karm is great at is like self-talk, to use that expression. Like when you're not doing the podcast and you're alone, like are you talking positive things into your mind? Like are you like consciously doing that? Because I'm doing the exact opposite. I'm like usually like, oh, my show sucked. Oh, I don't have enough subscribers. Oh, I don't have enough downloads. Oh, I don't have enough this. I don't have enough that. I should have said this to my kid during T-ball practice. Now he's never going to make the Yankees. I didn't go to my daughter's basketball game. Now she's going to, like, so I'm curious, like, how you talk to yourself.
Pessimist as well.
Good.
I am very hard on myself. I am very like my YouTube channel. I'm like, my YouTube channel sucks. Everybody like hates me. I probably sent someone a text message today being like, I know you hate me. And they probably don't. They probably are just going through their own stuff and just need a moment. And, so I think that we are our own worst critic. And, we like, even though Joel, you haven't had anything, well, I don't really know your full on life, but you haven't said like, oh, I was assaulted as a kid, and there is that generational, because there's those biochemical markers that live in the body, and so you're going to feel, even in your book you were talking about how your dad was from the Great Depression and how he constantly worried about money, and how you think that that's even a generational, I'm saying this in a different way, but a generational biochemical marker that you've had in your life. And there's literally studies that have shown that kids from Holocaust survivors will even have dreams that their parents have, and because it kind of remnants and just like is stagnant in those genetics.
Yeah, I mean, the short answer is I agree with you 1,000%. I mean, I think that there is.
May I say something?
Go ahead, Karm. So so
Okay.
unlike you to jump in, cut me off, and give your own opinion. Go ahead.
I just want to put a little correction in the thing, and I'm not bragging, and I wish it weren't true. But the trauma with Jews is not since the Holocaust. The Holocaust was the grand finale of that point, but it was going on literally from generation to generation to generation to generation to generation. Almost 2,000 years of being kicked around. And how we survived, the few who survived, is like a weird thing. It's a downright weird thing. But anxiety, ulcers, diabetes are common among Jews from all. Being stressed is kind of common. Maybe that propels to some form of creativity, but it's definitely there in the genes. And just one more point. What's also interesting, and I read this in an article somewhere, but I did not misunderstand it. I understood it correctly. That genetic changes can happen very, very rapidly. They don't have to go through 20 centuries, They can literally can happen on one traumatic event. You observe a change in the genetics. So the fact that we are functioning on this high level is a miracle.
Good point.
Yes, we're all here. We're all surviving. We're all functioning.
Exactly.
And I think that that's part of the post progression of trauma is that you guys are able to talk about it. You're able to put it out there and even have conversations with your kids that, hey, there was something that happened and I want you to know about it on a kid level.
Yeah.
No, but
I think that's important.
protective of his kids.
What's that?
You are pretty protective.
No, I'm protective, but I do like I tell them their grandmother is very important, and she's
And that I like.
an unusual person and has been and they know, they know enough about their grandmother that they know, and their friends do too. Part of it is because I wrote the book and we spoke at their school, and grandma has been there on grandparents' day to tell in a fifth grade way her story. So people know oh, that's Vita, my oldest daughter. That's her grandma. People know. And I think it's important not only for my kids, but for the other kids, and that they get that experience. I mean, we had a real quick. I mean, we had a teacher at their school who came up and said that he'd been a teacher. He's been teaching for 30 years, and there was 2 times that he has cried in those 30 something years. One time was meeting the former prime minister of Israel, and then meeting my mom, and it was powerful. He was he's like a phys ed guy, so he's a big, strong guy, a manly man, and it was and it was kind of emotional. But Karm's always had a bit of an aura about her, like a presence when she walks into a room, she can
No,
attract.
the thing was challenging. I never did that before, and I never did that since. I talked to 8th graders, but I never talked to 5th graders.
Oh yeah.
And this call only goes to the 5th grade, and they thought I should come and talk to the kids to the 5th grade. And some of the parents were afraid that it's too much for the kids. I didn't know that until after. So I tread it very gently, and I did not want to. If they have to be traumatized by
She
life,
started off by saying my
that's
father was slid into an oven and incinerated, and then it all went downhill from.
did not do that.
By the way, Tara, one of the things, my mom is a huge and that's why I wrote a book with humor. My mom says that you've got to have humor to get through difficult times. Do you agree with that?
Yes, 100%. I think that I went on a date probably a year ago or maybe less than a year ago. And the guy was just like, "Why are you laughing?" And I was just like, I kept laughing because I was like, I stabbed a guy in the eye. And I just kept laughing about it. And the guy probably thought I was insane, but
Did he
he
know
was
your story?
not that much. And it was funny because his brother's a huge YouTuber.
Mm.
And I was also like, can your brother come on my show? But I was also just like, I stabbed a guy in the eye and laughing about it. And he's like, my brother's never going to ever be on your show. He still follows me. So
That might make me a little nervous if I was, but I don't know. Could be interesting.
Yeah, there was never a second date, so.
Give me his number. I'll handle it. Now, by the way, Karm's a really good matchmaker, so we'll keep our eyes open.
Yeah, should I go to CrimeCon and then let's play matchmaker? Do you want? Should we find me
Yeah,
another true crime person?
I'm just hoping to get invited. I didn't realize, CrimeCon, it's already the main hotel's already sold out for September 2025. It's crazy. So, but yeah, we applied and I'm hoping to go. So if you're there,
Wait, you
yeah.
guys applied and you guys haven't heard back?
Well, I just applied. Yeah.
Okay.
Are you going?
Don't know. But yeah, no, but I think that's just a mixture of things, my trauma too. And talking even about my story all the time, I don't know if you guys feel this way, but there's a point where it's cathartic, but then there's points too where it doesn't help.
You mean when you talk too much about it?
Yeah. And then it becomes like I honestly, when I was dealing with the breakup or a breakup and stuff, I literally had flashbacks about blood being in my hair for like 2 days because I was in the hospital and hadn't had a chance to shower or anything. And I had John's blood in my hair still. So I was like, I just got that flashback right as the relationship. And so it was daunting, and I don't know if like even you guys feel that it comes up at times where you're like, I don't want this right now.
I mean, it does for me all the time, but I do try to suppress
My
it.
latest drama is my husband dying. And the other day, I even told Joel, it was so lifelike. In my dream, when I woke up, I was very, very sad because he was his usual nice and great self in my dream. Obviously, things happen that are painful. Obviously, things happen that are painful. But I tell you another interesting story and think about this one. I had a very close friend, Bruria, and she was the only one among my friends who was a survivor of the Holocaust in Poland, which it was hell to be a survivor there because it lasted forever. Where I was, it wasn't such a long period of time. It was towards the end of the war. But where she was, and then when the war was over, she married another survivor. So both of them were traumatized survivors, and they were the only ones among my friends who got divorced.
Okay. And do you think that the trauma was too much for them both?
Yes, the two dramas combined. I think like I was very lucky because I married my husband whose biggest trauma about the Holocaust was that he was in America and didn't get butter or chewing gum or whatever. He had no Holocaust drama personally. But then he had the trauma of not having money for the rent when he was growing up. That didn't bother me at all because for me, money in Yugoslavia after World War II was like a monopoly money. But in the end, he wasn't worried about money. The last few years, he was worried about time, that he was running out of time. He was aware and he was intelligent enough to know that it was a more valued commodity. Time was a more valued commodity than money.
Here we are, a full circle. We started with putting Jews into ovens during Auschwitz and the Holocaust, and ending with death and running out of time. This is it's a lot of talk about, I don't know, Tara, in other cultures, but in the Jewish tradition, as a matter of fact, before we transitioned to true crime, one of the things that you get as the son of a Jewish mother, you get the death and dying updates of everyone in the building. So it's like Harold has rectal cancer, Gertrude has got stage 3 colon cancer, whatever. So I even did a segment on our original non-true crime podcast that was called This Week in Dead and Dying, and we would talk about everyone, not giving confidential information. We wouldn't mention last names, but we would mention who was in the process of death and dying every week on our show.
It's not funny at all.
Yeah, it's probably not that funny.
starting to laugh, and I'm like, should I laugh
That's
about this
okay.
right now?
That's totally appropriate for our behavior here.
Yeah, for our behavior, it's normal, but I wouldn't say it's normal. But
It's called
yeah,
black humor.
yeah, but we've come full circle, I think.
Yes, I think so. Well, I think that is going to be almost the perfect note to wrap up on. I feel like we should leave people with something happy. So, do you guys have any exciting guests coming up? Do you guys have any exciting projects? I know you guys were talking about a second book together.
Yeah. So first of all, I just want to let everybody know they can find the podcast, which is True Crime. We do a panel, a live show every night with 3 guests covering the most, the biggest cases and trending cases in true crime, and that's the big platform is YouTube, but it's also anywhere you listen to podcasts. And then I've got the book out about my mom under same title, Surviving the Survivor. That's anywhere you buy books, and on Audible you can hear me and Karm tracking it, narrating it. And then we just launched we have all these amazing guests, and a lot of them were coming up to us saying, hey, I want to do this, but I don't have the time, or I want to do this, but don't know how. So we just launched a second channel that's comprised of our best guests hosting shows and really kind of specific true crime areas. So we've got a guy named who goes by the Geo Profiler that breaks cases using like geographic modeling. We've got active detective who's also a PhD, and he's doing a show called Dr. Detective, and so we're kind of soft launching, but we've got a bunch of shows up and running, and can keep adding people to that channel, and that's called True Crime Talk. True Crime Talk.
All
It's
right,
also on YouTube.
beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that so much. And do you edit and do everything for them?
Yeah, so it's like a collective. The short answer is yes. The long answer is we're still figuring all the details out. But we were covering trials on there. But for people who don't know, YouTube's like a whole ecosystem, and you have to have moderators and all this stuff. And when you're doing trials, it's like 8, 9, 10 hours a day, and it's a lot. So we have we already have over 10,000 subscribers on that channel. So people were interested because it's already kind of platformed, and it's monetized. And by the way, you know, one of my gripes, I'm just going to say this. So people will say to me, "Oh, you're just doing it for the clicks," and I'm like, "No crap, dummy! Like that's what this business is. Like you want people to see your stuff. That's why I was in broadcast news. Like you don't want bad ratings, you want good ratings. But there's always that insult, like, "Oh, you're just doing it for clicks." Everybody should be doing it for clicks. But I also do it because I really enjoy it. I think the subject matter is important, but yeah, this second channel is really kind of like a labor of love. And my wife is really kind of, who's a former CBS News correspondent, she's kind of running the show. But we've had probably 500 to 700 amazing guests on, and they're starting to migrate over to host our own shows now. So it's gonna be cool.
That's so awesome. I love that. And then, Karm, do you have any last words of wisdom?
She froze. Perfect
Yeah.
timing. Carmel's, look at it. Perfect time. I always ask. I'm in Arrested Development, and I am incredibly immature. So before we hang up, I'll be like, Karm, what do you have to say? Like, what is your final thing? Like, in case this is like the last time we ever talk. And she will always say, buy low, sell high. Like she does it as a joke. So that's probably how she would have answered. But it's amazing that she froze right here. But Karm's all about, you got to enjoy life, keep moving forward. I'll speak for her. And
Thank you for listening to this episode with Joel and Karm from Surviving the Survivor. I had great conversations with them. We talked about our fun at CrimeCon and how I was on their episode with Collier and how that was just such an amazing time. So I hope that you guys like this episode. Please feel free to like, subscribe. If you're listening on podcast, please subscribe, give a 5-star review because it really helps in growing. And I am trying to grow and build since just like a year ago, 2 years ago, kind of got canceled, and I still feel the effects from that. So if you guys do, please leave a comment, a review. It really does help, and it really helps boosting this podcast up and growing. So until next time, I'm Tara Newell, and thank you so much for listening to Tara's Baddies Club.